We start with the name of Allah. We start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah, the one who necessarily exists. Allah is the name that indicates that entity which necessarily exists in His primary two attributes that He mentions. That revelation, anytime we begin reciting revelation, or anytime we begin doing any action, we start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, the two names of mercy of Allah. The Ar-Rahman, the universally merciful, in that He gave us existence, and He gives us and He continues to feed us. Though we didn't ask for existence, but He gave it to us. We didn't ask for Him to provide, but He provided. And then Ar-Rahim, the one who is particularly merciful in that He has given us our Iman. That particular mercy that is for the Muslim, the particular mercy that is to be from the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. And among those particular mercies that He has given us to this Ummah is the wudu. It's an action that we don't think about too often. The wudu, the word wudu comes from the root wada'a, which means it means to be illumined, to luster, to have light beaming off of you. This is where the word wudu comes from. We know that the Prophet ﷺ said that He will recognize His ummah on the Day of Judgment by the shine that they have on their limbs from the wudu. That's why one of His names, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the Qa'id al-Ghur al-Muhajjalin, the leader of those who have glowing foreheads, right? You know the horse, when the horse has like a glow, has that white spot on its forehead, that's a ghurra. Right, the glowing ghurra, that the Prophet ﷺ said that those of my ummah who extend their wudu, they'll be recognized on the Day of Judgment by Him sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the glow that they have with their wudu. And this wudu that we do, of course it removes the impurities that we may have on our limbs. Right, if you have dirt on you and you wash it off, that comes off. It's a purification for that. And purification is part of our faith. That how many hadith do we have? That at-tuhuru shatrul iman, or at-tuhuru nisful iman, at-taharatu nisful iman. Right? How many different ahadith do we have speaking about the importance of purification in our faith? That it's half of faith. But what is this wudu that we're doing before we enter the prayer? Before the prayer starts, we are, whether we have dirt on us or not, we are going through a ritual in which we signify the purification of ourselves. Both the exterior, the limbs and the mind, from the sins that they may commit, and the interior, the inward reality that is within us. The Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu used to see the sins of the people when they made wudu, that he would see the sins falling off of them. That this wudu is not merely for the external purification. It's to enter into a spiritual state of purification. Right? If you make wudu and dirt gets on you, that dirt doesn't invalidate your wudu. You still have something that you'd consider filthy on you. You wouldn't want that on you. But the point is the spiritual state that you enter into wudu. When you enter into wudu, you enter into a spiritual state, not necessarily a physical state. And in this regard, the ulama speak about wudu as a reminder that we have purified ourselves from the exterior that other people see. That other people see that you've washed off any impurities that you might have on you. Right? But this wudu is also a reminder for the tahara, for the purification that happens to a person inside. That the purification their soul receives. Particularly if that wudu is made with the intention of purifying the self, the soul, the thing that animates us and gives us life. If that wudu is made with that intention. And we know from the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that no servant makes wudu except that when the water reaches the face and the eye, even the sins fall out through the eyelids from under the fingernails and all that, the sins fall out. But when we make that wudu, that we wash our mouth, that we purify our mouth from whatever impurities might exist physically, but also the spiritual impurities of backbiting, of lying, of slandering, of mockery, that when we make that wudu, that our intention should be that we also purify ourselves from the spiritual impurities. Then that when we wash our face in wudu, what are we doing? We're removing the physical impurities, sure, but we're also reminding ourselves that we should remove ourselves from facing towards anything that Allah doesn't want us to face towards. Whether it's our face's orientation with our bodies or our heart's orientation with our souls. That wudu is a reminder. That presence in wudu is a reminder that orientation is not towards the physical, the material. That our orientation is towards the spiritual, towards Allah Azza wa Jal. That when we wash our arms, that what do we do when we wash our arms? That we remove that physical impurity, sure. But that we are seeking to remove ourselves from impurities that our hands may commit. To use our hands where they weren't used, to use our hands for things that it wasn't meant to be used for. That's also a purification that we're doing at that moment. Then when we wash our heads, that we wash that part of our body that is high and mighty, that we consider so high and mighty. And that when we wash ourselves, we remove the sense that we're above anyone else. The arrogance that might be inside of our hearts, that we think that we're at the head of society, that we are the center of attention, the chief of your clan, whether it be your family or your friend circle or at work, whatever it may be. That when we wash the word for the head is ra's. When you wash the ra's, you also remove the riyasa, the desire to be in a state of leadership, so that people look at you and say, wow, look at that person. The desire to have rank and status among the people. And that we become people who want status with Allah and His angels. That if people don't mention us in their gatherings, that we know Allah mentions us and His angels mention us. That we become people of dhikr. When Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, remember me and I'll remember you, that what's more important to us is our rank with the mention that we have with Allah and in the circle of the angels. That when we wash our heads, that's what we imagine, that we're removing from ourselves the desire to be above anyone else. When we wash our ears, when we wipe our ears in that wudu, that we wipe away the sins that our ears may have committed, to listening to something we shouldn't have listened to be part of conversation that we weren't supposed to be part of. And when we wash our feet, to wash away the physical impurities, yes, but to wash away the sins that our feet commit, to walking towards and striving towards things that Allah does not want us to strive towards. To strive towards anything other than Him Azza wa Jal. To wash that away from ourselves. That wudu is removing that physical impurity, but it's also a reminder for us to remove our spiritual impurities. And when we have that wudu that is coupled with cognizance, with presence, with a state of mind that I am purifying myself for salah, or I'm purifying myself for the presence of Allah. And when is Allah not present? When is Allah not present? Should we not always be purified for the presence of Allah? That's what we're doing. And then that's when wudu becomes salahul mu'min, as we know that in the athar, in the narration, and that it said that the wudu is the weapon of the believer. That it's a weapon against who? Against shaitan. Against the force that wants you to distance yourself from your Lord. That's when that wudu becomes the weapon of the believer. And that's when that wudu becomes miftahu salah. Miftahu salati al-wudu. The Prophet ﷺ said that the key to prayer is wudu. That you can't do your prayer without wudu, but also to have a proper prayer, a prayer with presence, you need wudu. You need purification, you need tahara. So that when we're in our prayer and we want more presence, and all of a sudden when we enter that, when we say that Allahu Akbar and enter that prayer, and all of a sudden that's when all the thoughts about what's happening with so-and-so at work, or what that friend did, or what I have to do at school, or this assignment that I missed, or this thing that I'm worrying about, that when those thoughts come in the prayer and take away from our presence in the prayer, that we know that perhaps our preliminary for that prayer, that wudu was not properly done. So may Allah make us people of purification. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين يا قوم استغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. This act of wudu itself is an act of worship with the niyyah of taqarrub, with having proximity towards Allah. That this act that we do, the wudu that we try to stay on, whether it's a time of salah or not, it itself is our preparation for being in the presence of Allah, our cognizance of being in the presence of Allah. And for this reason, the ulama of this tradition, the metaphysicians of this tradition, have recommended that people be in a consistent state of wudu, whether they need that wudu at the time or not, as a reminder that I might not be in prayer. And in prayer, we don't distract ourselves with things other than what the prayer is for. We don't move our arms about. We don't move our tongue about. We try not to allow our mind to wander in places that they're not meant to wander. That wudu that we do for that prayer is that presence that we have can equally be applicable to the presence we have with Allah outside of that prayer. To stay on that wudu is to stay cognizant, be a person of taqwa, of wariness, God wariness, aware that Allah is watching. That's what this action is. And for this reason, it's that the ulama recommend that we stay consistent on wudu, and that the person who wants to travel the path towards Allah is a person who tries to remain in purification outwardly and inwardly. So may Allah make us people of purification. May Allah make us a people of tahara. May Allah make us a people who have consistent presence with Him. May Allah make us a people who purify our outer bodies, but more importantly, purify our limbs from sins, and purify our minds from thoughts that we shouldn't have, to purify our tongues from words that we shouldn't say, purify our thoughts from thinking badly of others, from assuming the worst of others. May Allah purify our inner states. May Allah purify our souls from the diseases that might afflict us. May Allah purify us from our physical diseases and our mental diseases and our spiritual diseases. May Allah make us of people who seek purity and seek presence with Him Azza wa Jal. May Allah make us of people who seek to consistently be in His presence. May Allah make us of people who seek no presence other than His. May Allah make us a people who find security and aman and salam in His presence, to find solace solely in His presence and in no other presence. So we say, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam, tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram, hayyina wa adkhilna dar salam. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. May Allah make us people who are grateful for our teachers, particularly our first teachers, our parents. So we say, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا 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 رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. May Allah make us a people whose experience of the heat of the hereafter is lightened because of our experience sitting in the heat today. May Allah allow us to be people who experience the coolness of His shade, even if we don't experience that shade right now. May Allah make us a people who experience security from the fires that surround us, and security from the fires of things like jealousy that eat up our good deeds. May Allah make us a people who are people of security and people of salam, people who have complete solace in Him. May Allah make us a people who find solace in His Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and recognize that Allah and His angels send the salawat and the salam on Him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we're commanded to do the same. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وعلى أزواج سيدنا محمد وعلى أصحاب سيدنا محمد وعلى أتباع سيدنا محمد وعلى أحباب سيدنا محمد وعلى أمة سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم وصلي عليه. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اذكروا الله يذكركم. Remember Allah, He'll remember you. وادعوه يستجب لكم. Call upon Him and He'll answer you. ولذكر الله أكبر. And the remembrance of Allah is greater. والله يعلم ما تصنعون وأقيموا الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر.